All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of my daily vlog. This is daily vlog number, 29. It's getting crazy, folks. So, today, remember when somebody in the comment section asked me a question? I made a whole video about it because I thought, well, this is something I could apply to a lot of different people, and as this 20 contents were popular on this channel, they had a follow-up question, which is great. Again, I adore people asking me questions. And my intention, because this question is a little bit more specific to like the Transformers RPG, my intention was to just write them a response. And with everything that has been going on and my inability to actually physically get to my computer for the past few days, and not wanting to have to type my kind of technical response on my phone keyboard, and have to deal with autocorrect, which at this particular point into the time, I personally believe that autocorrect has a personal vendetta against me. Because it doesn't matter. I have a Galaxy phone. And I've been using Galaxy phones since the original Galaxy phone line, because at the time we sold them. I started off, my first smartphone I ever had was an HTC. What was it called? I don't know, but it was this thing that you could slide and it had a physical keyboard, and I actually kind of miss the physical keyboard now. And then after that, I went immediately to the Galaxy line of phones, and I've never gone back. I love the Galaxy line of phones; they're real great. It's one of the few things in my life that I'm not willing to make a get something less, because I use my phone so much, especially since becoming disabled. My phone is my connection to the outside world. And so I need something that's going to be able to do a lot of different things. So anyway, I use the swipe system, which is basically, instead of typing on the phone, you drag your finger across the letters, and the phone figures out what you're trying to say based on the letters that you stop on. So when Swipe first came out, like, that was one of the reasons I didn't want to go to a Galaxy phone, because none of them had physical keyboards. And at the time, I also found out that you could get things like Super Nintendo emulators for your phone. And so I could play Super Nintendo games. But in order to play them on old school phones, you either had to use a touchscreen, which sucked, or I actually bought one of these things, where this little kind of gel thing that you would put on top of your physical keyboard, and then it would push. It had hard buttons on it and stuff like that. It would actually turn it into a controller. And it was really cool and really fun. I really liked it. And so I was really worried about losing my physical keyboard for that, and because I was used to typing on a physical keyboard. And the dude I was working with goes, "Oh no, once you start using Swipe, you'll never type your words again." And I really haven't. I've been using Swipe for over a decade. But for some odd reason, in the past 6 years, Swipe has decided that very bizarre words are really, really important. And they're words that I've never used ever. And it will just always decide to use the wrong word for me. Like, one of the ones that pisses me off constantly, when I text people, I am relatively formal. And so I use conditional forms. I think that's the correct terms. Conditional forms of words constantly. Things like would, could. And I use could all the time, especially when like my brother does the shopping for us, because he can actually leave the house, and I can't. And so I will do things like, the next time you go shopping, could you pick me up some more water? Or something like that. Something really, really simple. For some odd reason, the word could doesn't exist in the Swipe thing. The word cloud does. And it doesn't matter how much I emphasize that I am not touching the L until long after I do the O and the U. It will still say cloud, cloud, cloud. There's another word that I can't even remember what the word is, but every time I say should, it doesn't know the word should. So anyway, I have a personal vendetta against autocorrect, and it hates me. And it always changes words that don't need to be changed. And it'll put words in there that don't even make sense. And I've just gotten to the point where whatever autocorrect decides that I'm trying to say is what I meant to say from now on. So if you guys ever see a weird post that doesn't make sense, that's autocorrect's fault. Blame them. Anyway, so I keep meaning to reply to this, and I read every single comment that anyone posts on any of my videos. I read every single one of them. I try to reply to every single one of them as quickly as I can. I've just been real sick. And I don't have a topic for today's daily vlog. So, for today, I am going to basically answer Mr. Sims Music and their question. So, and actually, and again, anytime I'm going to answer a very, very specific question, I'm going to do my best to kind of broaden the topic as much as I can so that people other than Mr. Sims Music can actually get something from this. Not that I don't want, it's not that I have a problem answering a single question with a video, but if only one person watches the video, it makes me sad. So anyway, question Mr. Sims had was, and this is something that is not only kind of built into the Essence 20 system in general, but if you're familiar with what's called a West Marches campaign, or if you've ever done any kind of living campaign, this is kind of a common problem to deal with. The question was basically, because of the mission-based structure of the Transformers RPG and the Essence 20 system in general, where at the beginning of every mission, you get to make your requisitions for new weapons and stuff like that. And then you go on the mission, you come back, rinse and repeat. The system itself is designed to be very mission-based. Does that mean that it has to be mission-based? No. My Power Rangers RPG, we really didn't use the kind of quote-unquote mission base. We didn't have them doing requisition rolls or anything like that, but we also only played for 4 sessions. So do you have to have it mission-based? No, but the game is designed around that. So if you're not going to do that, you do have to kind of modify how the system works. So the problem with a mission-based structure is it can feel very kind of railroady and limiting to the player's freedom of choice. Especially if you have players that are used to a more kind of sandbox style RPG where they're just kind of plopped in an area and go, hey, do what you want. And then the GM kind of writes around what their choices are. Which is a very different style of GMing, and not everybody can play that way. And it generally requires a lot of major prep work. I personally do not enjoy a sandbox style GM, a sandbox style RPG, simply because it also takes a very special kind of player to be able to thrive in a world like that. And a lot of sandbox style RPGs very quickly turn into just wandering around and are, I don't want to say pointless, but are purposeless. And the players get burnt out really quickly because they feel like nothing they do matters. Because if they decide to do something and win something, that's fine. But if they just go in the opposite direction, nothing ever happens to that stuff. And it just seems like the world has no purpose. Again, it takes a very special kind of GM and a special kind of player to really thrive in a purely sandbox setting. What is significantly more common is a more narrative-focused thing where you start with the players in a certain spot and you give them little leads to conduct them along a style of narrative that can change over time. But anyway, so for a mission-based structure, basically the way it works is the beginning of your session or the beginning of that storyline, they're sitting in a briefing room of some kind or some place, and somebody is telling them, hey, listen, this is what I want you to do. This is how I want you to do it. Go for it. And if you do the things that I ask you to do, you will get rewarded for it. And if we specifically look at the Transformers RPG, the Transformers in and of themselves are very much akin to a military unit where you have a supreme commander and you have lieutenants and teams and stuff like that. The GI Joe is even more explicitly a military organization where you do have ranks, but they do try to limit that by the idea that for the most part, like General Hawk has an actual rank, and Duke has an actual rank, and then everybody else is kind of just in there. And so they do their best to not have a specific chain of command, which is helpful. But it does present a bit of a problem if you are playing you're playing an RPG that does have that kind of military tradition built into it, whether or not it's an actual military or just a very structured chain of command, which exists outside the military. A lot of businesses are run in a very similar thing where you have your regional manager, district manager, store manager, assistant store manager, lower managers, employees, and you're supposed to respect the chain of command and other things like that. So it's not a bizarre experience for most of the Western world to understand chain of command, even if they're not military. But it does present some issues because you run into the thing where you are telling the players exactly what they have to do and exactly where they have to go. And so how do the players really have any choice in the matter? And especially if you're doing something military, if you disobey orders, this is something I used to tell my management trainees when I was giving them... This is generally like a few months after they'd been in management, unless they did something stupid, which is the idea that pulling rank, massively stupid thing to do in anything other than the military. The term pulling rank comes from the military, and it's literally when somebody has to go, hey, do you see my rank here? My rank is higher than your rank, and that means when I tell you to do something, you do it. And that's how pulling rank works. There's a lot of situations in the military where someone of a higher rank will tell someone to do something else, and it's not an order or anything like that. It's just them going, hey, can you do this or do that? And it's just a request, just like any other interaction with people. But there will be situations where they go, hey, that's an order. Hey, do you see my rank? I'm telling you that this is what you're going to do because my rank says I get to tell you what to do. It's called pulling rank. In management, pulling rank is something that happens. And it's generally the worst thing that you can do. The reason why is the reason pulling rank works in the military is when someone pulls rank, they're giving you an order. If you disobey orders, depending on where you are, bare minimum, you're getting court-martialed. And court-martial, all of that means, like, for people that don't know, a court-martial is just a military trial. So you're being brought up charges, you're going to be tried, and it can result in you but being discharged. It can result in prison time. And if it is a time of war and you disobey an order, you can die. Like, that's something that can happen. If you do something that endangers the lives of the other troops that are under this particular person's command, that's something that can happen. As far as examples of it actually happening, I have no idea. But it's theoretically possible that it can happen. And that is one of the aspects of pulling rank that makes it very, very effective. Is, hey, listen, if you don't do what I say, either you're going to go to jail or you're going to die. It's a remarkably powerful motivator. In retail, which is where I worked, pulling rank has nothing. If I say, hey, I'm your manager and I'm telling you to do this, they don't have any reason to do what you tell them to do. This is super secret manager stuff. Don't tell anyone outside the management. Your employees have no reason to do anything that you tell them to. With a few rare exceptions, the absolute worst thing that can happen to someone if they don't do what a manager tells them to do is they can get fired. And if you are an entry-level manager, the person that you are threatening with firing doesn't have a huge amount invested in this job. They're an entry level employee. They're generally not making a whole lot of money, and that, especially in retail, that particular position exists in every one of your competitors' stores and everywhere else in retail. Like working at a Staples is going to be very similar to working at a Pick and Save. It's going to be very similar to working at a Home Depot at the base level. Yes, there will be slight differences in what you do, but for the most part, if you've worked in retail, you can work in any retail. And the ability to blackball someone that low on the totem pole from all of retail just doesn't exist. Higher up you get, the easier you are to get blackballed. But someone that low, so literally you are just the only two positive results you can get from, or the only two results you can get, neither of them are positive, from pulling rank is one, that employee becomes a bad employee for the rest of the time that they work for you. And what I mean by bad employee is they do the absolute bare minimum that they have to do to keep their job, and they will do everything that they can to make your life miserable. That's what happens when you pull rank. The other thing that can happen is they quit or you fire them. And that means you are short-staffed. You have to explain to the higher-ups why it is that you now have to spend the time and money in dealing with whatever legal issues that arise from firing someone, because firing someone is a remarkably complex process. Back when I was in college, they actually had a number to it. Hiring someone based on the idea of how much it costs to train them, how much money you lose from them just making mistakes in the job, all that's factored in, costs something around the neighborhood of $15,000 on average. Firing someone costs anywhere between about $30,000 to $32,000 when you have to deal with the things like unemployment insurance increases, having to fight any unemployment insurance claims, having to fight any wrongful termination claims, stuff like that. It's expensive to fire someone. So firing someone and hiring a new person can cost anywhere in the neighborhood of $45,000 to $50,000, depending on how much efficiency you lose by working short-staffed. Whether that's through having to pay other people overtime to cover their shifts, or just not being able to sell the same amount that you normally would because you don't have enough people to staff the store effectively. Like, it's an expensive process. So anyway, getting back to a kind of military structure, the idea of players, if they are taking the kind of military structure seriously, disobeying orders can have really drastic consequences. And a lot of people believe those consequences exist. Like I said, that whole secret about employees actually don't have to do anything that you tell them. A lot of employees don't realize that. A lot of managers don't realize that either. That's why they pull rank. But a lot of employees think, oh my God, if I get fired, that's the worst thing in the world. It's really not. Good tip if you do get fired for not doing what a manager tells you to do for good reason. When you're interviewing for your next job and they ask you, why'd you leave the other one? You can go, I was terminated due to a disagreement between me and one of the members of management. Oh, really? What was it about? Well, they told me that I needed to do something that I didn't feel comfortable doing, and as opposed to trying to talk it out, they just took the termination. It's still going to look bad, but never badmouth your old employer, because that looks significantly worse, because they're going to consider, well, what are you going to say when you leave this company? So never badmouth your former employer, even if they did do something super, super scummy. Never badmouth your former employer. It's just not going to get you hired. It sucks. I know. Shouldn't be like that. It is like that. That's how it works. Anyway, so how do you give players free choice in a situation where they're told exactly where to go and what to do, and especially in a situation where it's kind of implied that disobeying orders can come with some pretty grave problems. And the reason I bring in West March's campaigns, if you're not familiar with what the West March campaign is, basically a West March's campaign is very similar to a living campaign like the D&D Adventures League or Pathfinder Society, where instead of having a set team that always works together, what happens is you will have a game master come up and say, I am running this particular adventure. It's made for this particular level range. Who wants to play in it? And it'll basically be kind of a first come, first serve. And so every time you have a different set of groups. But because of that, when the group gets together, they're basically meeting in an inn or something like that, or an adventuring guild or something. They're told, this is what we want you to do, and this is where you need to go. And so it runs into kind of similar problems of, well, where is player freedom? And there's a number of different ways that you can deal with that. One of my favorite examples, mostly because I am rewatching the entire series right now, Stargate SG-1. Stargate SG-1 is one of the greatest sci-fi series ever. Stargate Atlantis was a brilliant spin-off that was also really, really good. Stargate Universe was amazing and shouldn't have been canceled after 2 seasons. I'm still upset about that. But basically, you have a West Marches campaign. Like the Stargate SG-1 is a West Marches campaign. Everybody starts in the SGC, which is their adventuring guild, and then they're given a mission to kind of explore the areas around this central town, which is what a West Marches campaign. You have a centralized town and you have a dangerous wilderness around it that you can go and send adventurers. And so what happens is the dangerous wilderness around SGC is all the planets through the Stargate. And there will be missions that they go on that have very specific goals. Go here, get this item, kill this person, come back. And that can be very, very nice because that gives the players the ability to plan ahead and use kind of tactics that they wouldn't use in a situation where they don't know what they're going into. So I'm not saying never do that. That's a lot of fun, and it gives the players a different kind of freedom. Encourage them to make their own plans about how they're going to do that. Give them intelligence. If you're going to give them a very specific thing of, we need you to kill this person, or we need you to get this bit of energon, or something like that, give them the same kind of intelligence that would be given to an actual military unit. Okay, this is what we know of the area. You know, this is the person that we want you to kill, and this is an aerial map of the place that he's in. We don't know where he is in there, but we know he's somewhere in here, and these are the areas around it. These are the assets that exist in that place. You can decide to use them or not. This is our person on the inside who works as a cleaning lady. This is another person that lives in the area that tends to be friendly with us, but not always. So be careful about pissing him off. But he knows the land very well. And then go, okay, it's up to you guys to figure out how you're going to do this. And that can give the players a lot of freedom. And that, again, is something that can be done in a lot of different campaign types. Is, hey, listen, this is your goal, but we're not going to tell you how to get to it. That's a form of freedom and can be a lot of fun, especially for very tactical players. They can go, okay, well, the city has a wall around it, so how are we going to get around the wall? Well, we have a druid who can turn into a giant mole and will just burrow under the wall. Or we have a cleric, and they're really good at using mold earth. And so we're going to do that to kind of burrow under the wall. Or we have a wizard, and one of his favorite spells in the world is Dimension Door. And so he's just going to Dimension Door inside and then open the gate for us. Gives them a lot of different choices, and then they go, well, how are we going to find him in there? Well, we're going to have our ranger track him, or we're going to have our rogue sneak around, or we're going to have our monk just be super awesome because monks are the most amazing class ever and just do awesome monk shit and then win. Those things give them a lot of freedom and gives them a lot of choices to how to deal with things. And again, the only way that they're able to exhibit that freedom is if you give them instances that allow for that. So giving them intelligence before they go is a nice way for them to prepare for it. There's also situations where there's no intelligence. They just know, hey, all we know is this guy is going to be in this place at this time and he needs to go. We don't know where in there. We don't know anything about it. By the way, in a military setting, that will very rarely, if ever, happen. And it's monumentally stupid to send your troops into a place that you have zero intelligence for. But from a narrative perspective, that might be what it is. Or maybe the intelligence that they have is just really, really old or something. And so part of them prepping is like, we don't know what to expect. So maybe we're going to focus more on our information gathering abilities, and maybe we're going to bring things that we normally wouldn't because it'll help us gather more information. Encourage this kind of prep work before the mission starts, and that is how the Essence 20 system is kind of made and designed. Is the idea that the requisition aspect happens after you're given your mission, so that you can requisition things specifically for that mission. So that's an aspect that can give them freedom. However, what if you want them to not have a specific goal? Well, again, we're going to talk about SG1 here. One of the things that happen constantly on SG1 is, hey, we've never been to this planet before. We want you guys to go out there and get us intelligence. And that can be a really, really fun thing to do. It's, hey, sit everybody down. Okay, we've received intelligence that this particular person is going to be in this particular place in 2 months. In order for us to be able to take them out, or we know that there is this particular resource in this particular place, however, we know nothing about this place. What we want you guys to do is go in there and get as much information as possible and bring it back to us. That in and of itself is a really, really open mission, because you're not telling them what to get. You're basically just saying, hey, we need intelligence that we can use to eventually be able to do this thing. And that will give them a guideline. But then they get to go out and figure out what they feel is good intelligence and bad intelligence. And what can be even more fun is you send them off to get intelligence. And then the next time you send them on a mission, go, hey, guess what? You know that intelligence you guys got? Well, now you get to use it to plan this particular thing. And now you're rewarding them for the type of intelligence that they got, or punishing them for not getting the correct type of intelligence. And it's all based entirely on what they chose to learn and choose. In addition to that, going off and exploring somewhere or trying to get intelligence doesn't mean that that's the only thing that's going to happen. What happened constantly on SG1 is they would go somewhere with a specific purpose, and then they would find out something very, very different. A good example, there's an episode of SG1 where they make contact with a group of people. If you're not familiar with what SG1 is, basically there's a big ring. It lets them travel to other planets through a wormhole. And there's the bad guys are these things called the Goa'uld, which are snakes that go into people's brains and control them. And because they had a lot of technology, they took the place of various gods of different pantheons, most of them being Egyptian, but eventually you start going into like Japanese pantheons and Greek pantheons and other sorts of stuff like that. But anyway, so the Goa'uld are the bad guys, and they pretend that they're gods. And the kind of plot is that the Goa'uld went and transplanted just massive amounts of humans to different places in the galaxy to work as their slaves. And so this particular group was transplanted from, I think it was Aztec or Mayan. I always get those two cultures confused. But Central America, South American ancient civilization. They get transplanted to this planet. When they get there, they keep like the people come and they have these little apprentices that they have this name for, but they're all under the age of 12. And so every time they come to, and basically what it is it's the agreement is they're exchanging knowledge. And so every time they have something new that they want to teach these people, they'll bring a kid over and go teach this person, and that's how it works. And it was weird, but they're like, okay, sure, they want the apprentices to learn. That's perfectly fine. And they kind of trade knowledge. The SGC gets knowledge of Naquita reactors, and the people there get the ability or learn how to defend themselves from the Goa'uld. interesting thing. Well, what they find out eventually, after doing some tests, just normal kind of health screenings when an alien comes to another planet, is they find out that these kids have these nanites in their brain that make them really good at learning stuff, but then once they reach 12 years old, they have all the nanites harvested from them, and everybody in the society gets one of those nanites in their brain and basically gets all of the knowledge that each one of these kids learns. And that's how their society learns things, is they have kids learn them, and then the entire society gets that knowledge as a whole. However, when the kids get all the nanites taken out of their brain, they lose everything. They can't learn anymore. They basically become infants in 12-year-old bodies. And so obviously there is some ethical concerns with something like that, where you're basically sacrificing children for the rest of the population. And it's not all kids. There's only a subset of kids that actually turn into these learning robots. But O'Neill has an issue with that. And so what he does is he actually takes one of the kids and actually takes her to a school on Earth to have her experience what it's like to learn in a more traditional teaching setting and to have fun and play games and stuff like that, in the hopes to convince her not to go back to her people and live a normal life. And so what happens is, it started off like that mission for them was literally just, hey, give them this information and receive this information from them. And it turned into a negotiation, talking about ethics, and they tried to basically change an entire society. And watch the episode. It's a brilliant episode. And then it results in Colonel O'Neill disobeying orders. Specifically because he feels it's the right thing to do. And anytime you have a kind of mission-based structure, the idea of bureaucracy corrupting things is really, really common, and is a really fun trope to deal with, because it makes the players feel like they're kind of rebels, and there should be consequences to doing it as well. Colonel O'Neill, I don't believe, got any consequences from that, because it all turned out good, and nobody gets mad at Richard Dean Anderson, who's really awesome, by the way. From what I've heard from people that meet like the Stargate cast from any of the shows, they're apparently all like just really great people to be around. They're always nice to fans, and overall, everything I've heard about all of them is they're just really fun people to be around. But anyway, so adding just things that they weren't expecting. They go exploring, hoping just to find a new source of energon, and they find a bunch of Decepticons there that are already setting up a mine. And so the players now have the choice of, well, we can get intelligence and bring it back and maybe come back on a mission, but that also means that there's a chance that they will be able to become more ingrained, or maybe they will use more destructive methods to get the energon, which could permanently scar the wilderness there. Well, we could stay and we could fight them, but that means, getting into combat, which maybe they weren't prepared for. And it also could be that maybe there's a standing order of, don't engage Decepticons unless you absolutely have to. And they might get in trouble for that, depending on what happens in the battle. If during the battle that they decide to do, something happens and it does do permanent damage to the environment, they might get in trouble for that. They might get court-martialed for that. Like, adding in that twist that they're not expecting is one of the more entertaining aspects, especially when you're dealing with something involving exploration or intelligence gathering. Even in a situation where, hey, we're having you go to get this intelligence so that in 2 months we can do this. And they get there, and while they're gathering their intelligence, they find something else that they feel is really important. Maybe it's something connected to one of their backstories. Oh my God, we just found the guy that killed your parents, or someone that stole something really important to your family. And if all we do is the intelligence gathering, they will get away. Or you find out about something else that they're doing, and realize that no, like right now, the big baddie that you're supposed to be taking down won't be here for another couple months. But what they're doing right now is exploiting the population. Maybe again, to take a page from SG1, maybe they're posing as deities and forcing the local population to give them tribute and things like that. It's completely unethical, unacceptable. And even if you do contact and go, hey, we found them, they're doing this bad stuff. And again, the bureaucracy gets in the way. It's like, well, right now, as bad as that is, if we act now, we're not going to be able to get the big baddie later. So we want you to just get the intelligence and leave these people to suffer. And then it turns into the player's choice of, okay, do we want to follow our orders? Do we want to disobey our orders to do what we feel is right? You know, adding those little twists, even to very kind of cut and dry situations, can give the players a feeling of freedom that doesn't really exist otherwise. And the consequences of those actions can drive the campaign forward. You know, they decide to help the people that are basically being duped into believing that the Decepticons are deities. And they're able to free these people, but now they've missed out on being able to get Starscream or Megatron or something like that. So when they come back, they're punished. You know, maybe they are they're no longer allowed to do, if it was SG1, they're prevented from off-world duty for a certain time. Maybe they're not allowed to go off base and they have to stay there, which maybe they actually get told, hey, we're done with this. You are out of the group. You will no longer be allowed to do anything, and we're going to send you back to Cybertron or something like that. And then they have to either decide to kind of rebel and form their own group and be a rogue organization, or kind of take the punishment and just accept, you know what, we made a choice and we're going to accept the punishment. They could fight the punishment. You could have an actual court-martial, an actual trial scene where they have to try to kind of defend themselves in court, which can be a lot of fun. It can be really boring as well, so kind of gauge what your players are interested in. But trials can be a heck of a lot of fun, especially if you start adding in. I've got a little thing on my glasses and it's driving me nuts. All right, trials and kind of being exposed to kind of bureaucracy can be a lot of fun, but can also be boring as hell. But if you start adding in things like, you know, rigging the trial in some way where there's someone in there that it doesn't matter what you say, they've already decided and that you're going to be punished in a particular way, which definitely doesn't happen in the real world ever. All of those things can make really, really interesting character moments, and allowing them to come up with ways to deal with that can be really fun, especially when you are a Transformer. You know, things start going bad, you guys can go, okay, well then we're going to try, you know, going vehicle mode and escaping from jail and being a rogue organization. Or we're going to, you know, stay in and see if we can't cure the corruption from inside. Or like, there's so many different ways to add choice to a very structured situation. The same thing is true about living campaigns, though. They tend to be a little bit more structured just to keep everything kind of fair. My nose itches so much, I don't know why. I literally just showered. But yeah, so a lot of well-written living campaigns will, when they do give you a twist in it, will give you the ability to take multiple positions based on that information. Some of the more boring ones will be, it won't matter what you do, you're going to go in this particular situation. But if you're writing stuff for living campaigns, you're just running living campaigns, it can be very, very useful to understand where you can introduce choice and still get to the ending that is written for you. And then again, if you are running a West Marches campaign or any of the Essence 20 games, because all the Essence 20 games are very similar in the idea that they are very mission-based, use those aspects. Give them exploration or intelligence gathering missions, and then add twists to them. When you do have specific goals, when they're on the mission, let them find out about something different. Make situations where, hey, you're going in to do this particular thing, and because the Decepticons are monitoring all transmissions, you will be cut off from all communication with base until you're done. So when they get out there and they find something that they weren't expecting, then they have to make the judgment call right then, because they can't call back to base and find out what they're supposed to do. They have to make the judgment call, and then they have to deal with the consequences. And consequences are what are going to make the freedom of choice feel like there's actual choices. If there's no consequences for what they do, good, bad, or otherwise, then there's no reason for them to make any choices. And they're just going to sit there and go, yes, DM Daddy, where do we go next? So yeah, I hope this has been interesting for you guys. It's one of the things that I really enjoy when I'm creating my own adventures and things like that, is I very rarely, like right now, one of my campaigns, The Legend of the Three Kingdoms, the most recent episode went up on Sunday. Their mission that they're on is they have 2 more generals that they need to take down to decrease the power of my version of Strahd, who's just called the Dark Lord. He's basically Dracula. However, because they decided to investigate a random mansion in a town that was acting really weird, I got to write this kind of really interesting story that they haven't been able to piece together yet, which sucks because I don't know if they're going to figure it out. But effectively, there was a wealthy family that lived there that, due to some infidelity with the wife and a court composer that was also there, some situations started changing. The major domo started doing some things that were weird, and eventually what they came to is it looks like they were kind of cutting up people to eat them. Not going to explain how it went that way. There's actual reasons why, but it doesn't look like they're going to find that out. And then while they're exploring it, they also found out that it looks like there might be another city underneath the city that they're in, or ruins of an older city underneath there, which also links into a bunch of other stuff. None of this stuff has anything to do with the generals, and it all has to do with this little town and what has basically happened to it recently. But they decided to go this particular way, and so I went, sure, and I just started kind of writing weird stuff. If they get out of this situation and never discover what it was, I may do a video just explaining it, because I do think it's really dark and macabre. But that's what, like, I'm running kind of a Domain of Dread game there, so things in this particular realm that they're in is fueled and sustained by the suffering of the people inside. So if people aren't suffering, the realm collapses. So everything that happens there is meant to increase suffering, because I have massive issues. So yeah, maybe, after they get done with this part, and if they go somewhere else eventually, I might do a video and just explain how that particular area worked and the stuff that they didn't find because of the choices that they made, just because I want someone to know about it. I spent a lot of time creating this. Yeah. Anyway, I hope this is useful to you, Mr. Sims, and to other people as well. Like I said, West March's campaign are really, really fun, and they're a great way to have a way for GMs to be able to play as well. Because the basis of a West March's campaign is you generally have a couple different people that agree to GM, and then everybody builds characters based on a kind of collected rule set, and then whoever can play that night comes and plays, or whoever is interested in that particular storyline comes and plays, and then they leave, and it's really fun. It's what the Adventures League is based on. So yeah. Anyway, that's my video today. So that's going to be all for me today. As always, please remember to like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Hit the bell icon, turn notifications on. All this stuff's super, super important. Otherwise, again, that's all for me today, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right? Bye-bye.